Day 608 of the Trump administration, and Republicans are turning up the pressure on Christine Blasey Ford. She is the California college professor who alleges Supreme Court nominee and federal judge Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her when they both attended a high school party. Kavanaugh denies the allegation. Ford has been given a deadline, now has less than 48 hours to decide whether she will testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Monday about her allegation. In a letter to her attorney today, committee chairman Charles Grassley of Iowa wrote, quote, "You have stated repeatedly that Dr. Ford wants to tell her story. I sincerely hope that Dr. Ford will accept my invitation to do so either privately or publicly on Monday. I remind you that consistent with committee rules, Dr. Ford's prepared testimony and biography are due to the committee by 10 a.m. on Friday, September 21, if she intends to testify on Monday. But through her lawyers, Ford has requested that the FBI investigate her allegation before she testifies, a request that Grassley has already rejected. He did offer to send committee staff to California to speak with Ford. Tonight, Ford's attorney released this statement, quote, "Dr. Ford was reluctantly thrust into the public spotlight only 2 days ago. She's currently unable to go home and is receiving ongoing threats to her and her family's safety. Fairness and respect for her situation dictate that she should have time to deal with this. She continues to believe that a full, nonpartisan investigation of this matter is needed, and she is willing to cooperate with the committee." However, the committee's stated plan to move forward with a hearing that has only 2 witnesses is not a fair or good faith investigation. There are multiple witnesses whose names have appeared publicly and should be included in any proceeding. The rush to a hearing is unnecessary and contrary to the committee discovering the truth. The president has been publicly supportive of Kavanaugh while allowing the Senate to take the lead in this fight. This morning, as he was about to board Marine One, he took care to temper his language.
Look, if she shows up and makes a credible showing, that'll be very interesting, and we'll have to make a decision. But I can only say this, he is such an outstanding man. Very hard for me to imagine that anything happened. Justice Kavanaugh has been treated very, very tough. And his family, I think it's a very unfair thing what's going on. So we'll see. But I do think this. They've given it a lot of time. They will continue to give it a lot of time. And really, it's up to the Senate. And I really rely on them. I think they're going to do a good job.
Do you believe Dr. Ford?
I'd really want to see her. I really would want to see what she has to say.
We should note the obvious here. The White House could ask the FBI to investigate Ford's allegations. Tonight, a number of the president's Republican allies are pushing to move ahead with a Kavanaugh vote in the committee with or without a hearing. Senator Lindsey Graham issued a statement today, quote, requiring an FBI investigation of a 36-year-old allegation without specific references to time or location before Professor Ford will appear before the Judiciary Committee is not about finding the truth, but delaying the process until after the midterm elections. It is imperative the Judiciary Committee move forward on the Kavanaugh nomination and a committee vote be taken as soon as possible. Washington Post reporter Robert Costa, who will join us in just a moment, reports tonight that Republicans are concerned about the political implications of rushing this confirmation. He writes, privately, discussions about the political fallout gripped the party, with Republican lawmakers and strategists unnerved by the charged, gender-infused debates that have upended this campaign season. Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, appears to be well aware of this. NBC News reports that a source close to her says she had a call with the deputy director of the FBI to get a better understanding about how background investigations are conducted. This morning on a local Maine radio show, the senator continued to publicly press for a hearing with both Ford and Kavanaugh.
I think it's not fair to Judge Kavanaugh for her not to come forward and testify. Both of them need to testify under oath next Monday before the Judiciary Committee.
Meanwhile, friends of Christine Blasey Ford are beginning to speak out, describing the college professor's dedication to her work and her aversion to being in the public eye. Several of her friends and classmates from her high school, Holton Arms, wrote an open letter of support for her. One of those friends who says she's known Ford for 4 decades now talked with our colleague Chris Hayes earlier tonight.
She's a strong woman, and she has a strong foundation with her family and her friends, and she's tremendously grateful for the support that she's gotten from everyone, and I think that's important to her so that she doesn't feel that she's just hanging out to dry here by herself. To suggest that someone who's been sexually assaulted isn't remembering this correctly is just makes my head explode. I think it makes a lot of women feel that way.
Let's bring in our leadoff panel on a Wednesday night. The aforementioned Robert Costa, national political reporter for The Washington Post and moderator of Washington Week on PBS. Kimberly Atkins, chief Washington reporter for The Boston Herald. And Mimi Rocah, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, now a distinguished fellow in criminal justice at the Pace University Law School. Counselor, I'd like to begin with you and ask you the pure hypothetical. If you were Dr. Ford's attorney, what do you think you would be advising here?
I would be advising exactly what they're saying, which is not don't testify ever, but don't testify until they have done an investigation. And here's why. This is a sham, and no one knows that better than Judge Kavanaugh, who is a longtime federal judge. If I, as a federal prosecutor or any lawyer, walked into his courtroom and tried to put on a case by throwing 2 witnesses up there without doing any investigation outside of what they're going to say on the stand, he would not be happy with our performance as lawyers in that courtroom. That is not how we look for the truth. That is not how we get at facts in this country. This is not a criminal proceeding, but everybody is saying they want to get at the truth. They're saying it in different ways, but people on both sides of the aisle. The only way to do that is to do a full investigation, and it can be done quickly. And so I think, in fairness to Dr. Ford, she has not said she won't testify, as I believe Senator Collins referred in her statement, that if she says she's not going to testify, that's unfair to Judge Kavanaugh. She is saying, do the work first and make this a fair playing field. Because if you put Dr. Ford up there and you put Judge Kavanaugh up there, we already know what's going to happen. Many Republican senators have already said as much, that they don't believe her, that they're going to question everything she says. And unless you have other facts to point to test the witnesses' credibility with, you're not going to get at the truth.
I just want to share a couple of things that we have witnessed over the past 24 hours, the first of which happened on this broadcast last night after the president said this isn't the FBI's thing, getting involved in an investigation like this. We put that question to FBI veteran senior official Chuck Rosenberg.
We should take a look at the letter I, Brian, in FBI, because it actually stands for investigation. This is precisely their thing. They pass along information to the White House on Mr. Kavanaugh, and if the White House wants more information, all they have to do is ask.
2 more things here, both on social media, one of them from Steve Schmidt, who wrote this tonight. Riddle me this. If someone is lying, Dr. Ford, and they know that lying to the FBI is a crime, why would they be asking for an FBI investigation? If a sitting federal judge is accused of something he denies with his reputation at stake, why wouldn't he demand one? And then finally, Stephen Dennis over at Bloomberg News. If both Kavanaugh and Ford testify under oath Monday and tell opposite stories, one would be committing the federal crime of lying to Congress. Would there be precedent for the FBI to then investigate? Mimi, this is why we have you here. Answers to any of these?
Well, absolutely. There would be an investigation then, or should be, about whether one of them is lying. But again, you can't really get at that answer without going beyond the 2 people. The Republicans are trying, by trying to jam this through, they're trying to make this a he said, she said situation. And it's not. It doesn't have to be. There are other witnesses out there. We already know about them in the public record, which, by the way, I think lends credibility to Dr. Ford's story. Why would she have told this story and put I think his name is Mark Judge, at the scene if she were making this up. Why would she put a friend of Brett Kavanaugh's there for people to go and investigate? But the fact is, there are people for them to talk to. There are so many details already in her story. She said she was wearing a bathing suit. Well, was there a pool party? I mean, there are things you can figure out. This is a closed community. There are people to talk to. So, yes, if one of them lies, there should and would be an investigation. But again, to even get to that point of deciding that, you need to do this. And the fact that, as Steve Schmidt said, the fact that Brett Kavanaugh is not himself saying, yeah, let's investigate this and asking for it himself, I think that's very telling. It's sort of like Trump trying to shut down the Mueller investigation. He's afraid of what's going to come out is really the only thing I think you can read into that. Hey,
Kim, your headline got our attention. It is analysis. Brett Kavanaugh's fate depends on which party blinks first. Is it, and yes, human lives and reputations are at stake. Is it that much of, it's been called a game of chicken, and how dug in are the sides as far as your reporting can tell?
Well, the sides are definitely dug in. As we see, the Democrats and Dr. Ford are not interested in moving forward without that FBI investigation as a prerequisite. But the Senate is a political body. We have Republicans and Democrats who are making political calculations. And right now they are dug in, but the momentum seems to have shifted to Republicans who seem to want to move forward with this vote, whether or not Dr. Ford does appear next week, despite the criticism that it looks like they are strong-arming her or trying to bully her to rush this process when the process has no real deadline. There's no reason why Monday has to be the day. They can take extra time. They can do more investigation if they don't want to get the FBI involved. They can have some sort of third-party arbitrator to sort of vet the testimony of the people involved. There are a lot of ways to do this, and they're choosing one way, which is their way or the highway. The Republicans are. But they are making that calculation because they believe in the end they will have the votes to confirm a Kavanaugh. And look, at the end of the day, they may be worried about the perception that they are strong-arming Dr. Ford, or that they may have the same problem that they had with Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas's confirmation. But despite the attention that Anita Hill's testimony got, in the end, the Republicans got the most conservative justice on the U.S. Supreme Court affirmed. And he has been on that court for 27 years. He might be on the court for a decade or more. They remember that. So I think some short-term political problems might be worth that in their calculation.
Okay, Robert Costa, your job tonight is to tell us everything you know, starting with this. Just how toxic could this become? Are the Republicans that willing to take this big a hit and kind of gavel this through?
It's a tough question for Republicans. In conversation today, Brian, with Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, he mentioned that the Anita Hill exchange with senators in 1991 during Clarence Thomas's confirmation hearing, and it led to the 1992 so-called Year of the Woman, when many women were elected to federal office. And Flake worried to me in conversation that Republicans could be walking into a moment on Monday that is charged, that has a party full of older white men in positions of power asking potentially aggressive questions. You have an accuser in Dr. Ford facing off against people like Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, 85 years old, in Congress since 1975, who was involved actually in that Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas confirmation process back in 1991. But the most interesting thing in my reporting notebook tonight, Brian, many Republicans are publicly calling for Dr. Ford to come forward and to appear on Monday. But privately, many of them tell me, Republican aides, some of them, even some lawmakers, that it may be best for the party to avoid the hearing, that they would like to move quickly on the Kavanaugh nomination, and they would like to avoid the political theater that they think could be damaging to them in the midterm elections.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.